Throughout the history of mankind, there comes an organization where ideology, blood, and crime preserve. An organization that gives nothing but terror, and it usually plays in the field of war, espionage, and in crimes. In many nations, it has different names, but it comes to one infamous term, and that is terrorist organization. Now, what if there is a terrorist organization where its leader is an eternal human being and his purpose is to be a conqueror? How did the international law perceive this? And did it even exist? Well, yes, we are discussing about the Ten Rings organization that exists in Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings. Shang-Chi is a character that lives in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he is a son of Wenwu, known also as Mandarin, the leader of the Ten Rings organization. Throughout histories, Ten Rings has been actively participating in dominating the Middle East, as shown in Iron Man, where Tony Stark was abducted by the Ten Rings themselves. Also, in many countries where they tend to practice an underground movement that could change the event of history. All branches of the Ten Rings operated as individual cells, with every cell operating independently of each other. Each cell will receive money and weapons as long as they received them and they did not ask questions about who gives the order. Under the 1994 Declaration on Measures to Eliminate International Terrorism, UN Documents A, RDS 51-110, 17 December 1996, enacts, terrorism is normally understood to refer to criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons or particular persons for political purposes. Thus, in usual situation where a state is the victim of the terror acts, states will act under the use of self-defense by going to war against terrorists. Herein, we will be discussing how did it apply in the Ten Rings.
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
Shang-Chi was trained by his father, Wenwu, to become assassins. Thus, he tried to run away and live a normal life for years in the United States of America. Yet, his father couldn't help but to bring his son back to the Ten Rings in China by sending his men and also assassins. This happened in San Francisco, United States, a state where the Ten Rings do not have any affiliation, nor there is an approval or knowledge by the United States to let this action be conducted. The action done by Ten Rings were endangering the civilian lives and destroying the public facilities. This do constitute the nation's sovereignty that was enshrined in Article 2.4 of United Nations Charter. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Under the traditional paradigm, acts of terrorism are treated as international criminal behavior rather than the acts of war. According to treaties of international criminal law, states parties are obliged to criminalize terrorist acts and to develop appropriate means of cooperation with other countries to apprehend, prosecute, and punish those responsible. However, due to the attacks of 11 September 2001, resulting in the death of nearly 3,000 civilians, as a day of unprecedented shock and suffering in the history of United States, many have taken the new paradigm to take the war on terrorism as self-defense. However, despite the intervention from Ten Rings, there are only two legal justifications for the use of force in international relations that are generally accepted to exist in international law. First, the use of force as self-defense itself, that was enshrined under Article 51 of UN Charter. It is stated that the use of counterforce should be necessary to repel an imminent attack, and the force used must be proportionate. And second, the use of force requires prior authorization by the UN Security Council, acting under Chapter 7, Article 42 of the UN Charter. Thus, if the events of Shang-Chi being targeted happen in real life, the United States as House Self-Defense and Security Council authorization was used as a justification for the 2003 invasion of Iraq as counter-events of 9/11 terrorism incidents. Surely, Ten Rings will also ignite the same result. Not the Avengers, but it is the USA that will come to China. In the MCU universe, there is a village in China named Talo. Herein, Wenwu believed and was deluded that his long-dead wife was imprisoned in the village. Thus, Wenwu assembles the Ten Rings to invade the Talo village. In this chapter, IHL could be applied, even though the case is consisted of terrorist organization and a small village in China, whereas law of armed conflicts applies to international armed conflicts between nation-states and under certain circumstances, organized resistance movements. This event, under international humanitarian law, was named as an act of aggression. Under Article 8 bis of Rome Statute, crime of aggression means the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution by a person in a position effectively to exercise control over or to direct the political or military action of a state of an act of aggression which by its character, gravity and scale constitutes a manifest violation of the Charter of the United Nations. This refers back to Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, that is act of aggression, meaning the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state. In the undergoing events, Su Wenwu commands the Ten Rings to invade or attack, with the objective to release the sealed prison that was guarded by the Talo. Article 8b stated that any invasion, aggression by the use of armed bands, groups, irregulars, or mercenaries which carry out acts of armed force is prohibited, which is exactly the action that was conducted by Ten Rings in Talo jurisdiction, and thus clearly constitutes an act of aggression.
You are a product of all who came before you.
Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings is a movie that teaches us the value of Chinese culture and the family. It shows the love and loyalty of a husband, the caring nature of a mother, discipline and legacy of a father, the lessons of a child, and the journeys to overcome the past. Wenwu is a prime example where loyalty can be dangerous if it derives from obsession. Through any means, and even by infringing the regulation of international law, Wenwu decided to go through it for his wife. And this can easily happen since in MCU itself, the boundaries of international law is never explained explicitly or implicitly, in which at the last moment, Wenwu plans finally failed, and the memory of his wife was seen in his son, Shang-Chi. He passed the legacy to his son. Just like how the international law has been evolving throughout many conventions, regulations, and adoptions, the core principle will always stay the same, and that is for the greater good and harmony of humanity. Peace and justice.